So generally you got your generator block. Let's just kind of like give it the shape of where we're going to be going with it. Now the first trick I'm going to show you guys is how to make a like a tubed sort of pipe with like proper joints and whatnot. And that's a very useful trick to know. So we're gonna start with that. We're gonna give this Shift D. I just did a duplicate. So we wanna, I'll just delete that again. We click A to select all, and then Shift D to duplicate. And then you right click to let it go back to normal. To, well, its original location. And then we're gonna scale it up with the S button to make it a little bit bigger. And then we hit the delete button, and we're gonna delete only the faces, because we want this wireframe of the cube basically. That's what we're gonna use as the basis for our tubing. The tube. Yeah, dupe a shape easily. Easy mode, baby. Yeah, just Shift D for duplicating an object. You can grab literally anything and duplicate it. And move it around. Delete it. Or if you want it in the exact same spot it was, you hit the right click button and it'll go there. Where it was duplicated from. And then you can scale it up to where you want it. And now we're gonna delete these edges. We don't need those edges. And now what we're gonna do is we're gonna delete these edges too, because we kind of want this kind of shape for our overall tubing. I'm gonna say, just to make it a little unique, we'll hit S and then Y to scale it only on the Y-axis. And that's gonna basically be like the general shape of the tubing, I'm thinking. And we're gonna put it on its own little thing on the right here. So we have that selected, we hit P, and you hit selection, and then that basically separates it into its own object, and you can work on them independently from there on. And now that we have this new thing as its own object, we're gonna click on the vertice option. We're gonna select all these corners on the top, and then we're gonna hit Control Shift and B. Hold on, let me get this right. B. All right, Control Shift B is for bevel, and that allows me to create curved stuff like this. So now we have a little curve of where the tube is going to be, and you want about 5 vertices for like the optimal roundness that will be provided. We'll do the same thing to the bottom here. And since it's already at a bit of an angle, we probably only need like 4. Right about there should be good. Now we've already got like this caged tube around the generator that will be more detailed, obviously. And now what we want to do is we want to turn this edge, because all this is a single edge that's like basically a big track, a big line. We want to make that 3D, so we're going to turn this into a 3D object. And what we want to do is we want to turn that mesh into a curve. And I think I have it set to a shortcut. I hit Q and I just set it to curve, and then I can set an object to mesh. Curves and meshes are basically like their own thing. So we need to figure out how to turn it into a curve without the shortcut, because the shortcut, obviously not everybody has that set up. I'm pretty sure it's in here. Transform. No. Or, you know what? What's even easier? If you hit spacebar, you can just do a search for curve, right? And what we want is this one that says curve. Object convert to curve. It looks like it's in the object tab up here. Convert to right here and curve. Boom. And if you want to go in there and you want to set it to a the Q button for a quick selection, you just right click it and you add it to quick favorites, which is the Q button. That's definitely one of like my favorite quick buttons. So anyway, now that it's a curve, on the right here, we have this little object data properties. It's got like a vertice and a line. And we want to go to the geometry tab here. And we want to set resolution to 5, I want to say. That's like the optimal resolution for what I do. And then we adjust the depth. And now we got an actual cage for the generator. Ba-boom! Magic. Actual space magic. A lot of people don't know how to do that, and I think that's like the easiest, fastest way to make 3D like tubing, basically. Deleting faces without losing the vertices. So let's we go to face select. There's vertice, edge, and face select. We select the object we want to duplicate it, scale it up, and then you hit the delete key and you select only faces. And when you do that, it only deletes the faces. And then you're left with the wireframe, basically. Yep. So that's how you do that. Now, let's say we want to... Alright, first of all, now that we have this, we want to make it back into a mesh. So we go to Object, Convert to, Mesh. And now it's an actual 3D object again. And once you do that, because you always want to do that like as it needs to be its own object, otherwise you'll do it to like whatever is going on in here, and you don't want that, so it needs to be its own thing. But now that it is a mesh again, you can slap it back into the same object, so you just have your one little object. I'm glad you're learning already. That's awesome. That's super dope. Okay. So now we want to, let's see, I want some bars on the floor area. So we want to select these 2 bars so that we can get a median point. Because that's where I want the bars to be, is in between these 2 supporting frame tubes. And then we hit Shift S, and we want to do cursor to selected. And that will set a cursor there so that we can go up to the add button and hit cube. And now we have a cube perfectly in the center of these 2 bars. And then we do scale X so that it's right there in the middle there. And then scale Z so that we can scale her on down. All right. And scale Y. There we go. Very nice. Looks like another bot showed up and followed me just now. So weird. Alright, so now we want to make 3 of these same bars across. Scale it a little bit there. Another bot. Cool. Alright, so since we want 3, we're gonna duplicate that object, hit right click so it goes to the same spot. Now we have 2 of them, right? We're going to slide it over on this axis. So it's right there. And we are going to hit P, selection, and now it's on its own object. And since the center point is still the origin of the original object, I can mirror this so that it's perfectly on the other side. So there's 3 of them evenly spaced, which you can use an array modifier, but I wouldn't for this. This is a lot easier to just use the mirror modifier. So to mirror that, while it's on its own object, in object mode, you click on the wrench here, and you go down to mirror in the second tab. You select mirror. We don't want to mirror it on the x-axis. We want to do it on the y-axis. All right. And then we hit apply. And now we have those 2 mesh objects. And we want to join it back to the original generator. So we select these 2 first. And then we hold shift and select the generator. They're both selected, and then you hit Control J to join them. And now they're all one object again. All right. Very cool, very nice. Let's say we want to do another bar on the top here. So we select these 2 bars so that we get the median point. We do Control S, cursor to selected. We add another cube. We do scale S button on the Y axis, and then SZ on this axis. We got SX, there we go, right there. Now we got a little bit more cage going. And we'll start working on the actual generator inside the cage, and then eventually we'll actually like make attachment points so that you know, it makes sense. Maybe we'll add a little bit of detail to this top piece, right? So we hit Control R to add a loop cut on this object, on this these faces, and then once that's there, so Control R and then right click, or no, Control R, left click, and then it wants you to set a, like where you want it. If you just want it to be where the most center point is what you usually do, you just right click and then it goes right there to the center there. And yeah, that's the best way to do that. Now we want to hit Control B to add more loop cuts, and we want to scroll down so that it's only the 2. So we're adding 2 loop cuts here, and this is a way to add a little bit of detail, as you'll see in a moment. We'll do Control B again right here to do another loop cut. And then we want to select these faces. We go to face select and we select these right here. And then SX to scale those until we got a little bit of extra detail on that top piece right there. Easy peasy. Also, if you'll notice, objects like this have faces that are hidden inside like the tube or whatever. So if you have face select check mark there, we want to select all, or no, select linked. So in order to select just one object while you're working on a multi-object project here, you want to select a face and you want to go to select similar and wait, yeah, similar, right? No, I don't see linked. Oh yeah, select linked. Okay, so you want to go to select linked, and it will only select the object that you have selected. That way you don't select everything. It's just select linked. I have that favorited on my Q button. Very important feature. And now what you want to do is you want to get rid of these faces because that's just unnecessary for the end result. You could do stuff like hold Shift Alt and then right click on these faces and it'll get rid of all of those. And if you hold Z and you go to wireframe, you're only selecting those faces that will never be seen again. And you hit delete and you delete the faces. And now those faces are gone. And because nobody's ever going to see those, and that's just extra detail that you don't need on the model. We're going to do that for down here again as well. We want to select linked each of these objects, and then hold Shift Alt and right click on all of them so that you're only selecting those faces that nobody will ever see, and delete those faces. Alright, now that's pretty clean. Very nice. We're gonna work on this next, the generator area. Let's see, so we want to have like a pan at the top somewhere, I think, for where like the gas will go into. So we'll bring that up here. And then once this, select this bottom face and do the cursor to selected with Shift S and then hit cursor to selected. And we want to add a cylinder. Once the cylinder is added, there's this thing at the bottom left. We want to adjust the vertices here to 16 because that's like the minimal for having smooth surfaces at a 30-degree angle when you have shade smooth enabled. Boom. Smooth cylinder. Now we want to rotate this. You do select linked, RX 90 degrees. And then we hit S to scale it. And we move it down. And I want to have this little cylinder right about there, I think. Yeah, that looks good. And then we're going to select the center of this, Control S, cursor to selected. And we're going to add a cube. We're going to grab this face and we're going to pull it on the y-axis to right about there. We're going to grab the top face. We're going to pull that all the way up into the above face. And before we select off of that, we're going to hit delete. And we're going to hit faces because that face will never be seen. And then we're going to go to edge select, Control Z wireframe. We want to grab this edge of that same object we just made. And we want to pull it out on the y-axis, right about there. Just to give it some angular look to it. Okay. Very nice, very nice. Now this cylinder again. If you select this face of the cylinder and you hit Control B, we're gonna bevel that. We'll bevel it right about there, and then you hit left click to accept the bevel. Give that some angular design there. And on this side, we are going to do the same thing, but give it a bit more bevel, I'd say. Control B to do the bevel, and we'll select this outer face again. And now we're going to do the inset trick, which you hit the I button on your keyboard and it will inset the face and create this extra geometry around the center there. And then now we're going to extrude. So you hit the E button on your keyboard and it will extrude from that face and create some extra geometry. All right. Let's put it right there. That looks good. All right, now I want to add a hexagon shape here in the center of this cylinder. So we do Control S, cursor to selected, and then we're gonna add another cylinder. We go down to the left here. We want to set the vertices to 6, which will make a perfect hexagon. That's another trick of the trade that I've learned over the years. And then we rotate it on X 90 degrees, RX 90, and then we want to hit S to scale it down. Pull it out to where it's about there. And then we want that to be there. And we don't want that face on the inside, right? So we can just kind of zoom our camera in there. And we can select that face and we can delete it. Delete face. Now we got this little hexagon here. Okay. Maybe I'll make it a bit smaller. Maybe I'll also add a little bit more like that. Okay. Very nice. We got the generator is starting to come into shape, you know? Now we want to do some detail on this gas pan on the top here. Okay. I want to curve the edges on the top. So we select these edges, and then we do Control-Shift-B to do the bevel trick. Oh, wait. Just Control-B. Yeah. There's other ways you can use bevel, but that's not what we wanted. We want about 5 edges worth of bevel. So now that is nice and curved on the top for the gas tray. Now, if we want to give like the illusion that the top of it can kind of come off, we're gonna do an edge loop, right? So Control R, find the edge loop where you want to put it, and then you hit L, or you left click, and then let's place it down here a little bit, right? Okay. Now what we do is we hit Control B. We're gonna add some more edge loops while that edge is selected. I'll put it right about there. Now here's another fancy trick. We'll go to the face selection. Once we have all of these faces selected, we're gonna hit the E button to extrude, but we don't want it to go anywhere, so we wanna right click so that the extrude just goes right where it was at. And then we hit Alt, we hold Alt, and then you hit S, and it will do a perfect extrude without having to go over here from the center point out from the center of the object. So that's a neat little trick that I learned. You can do that with pretty much anything. You hold Alt S, and you can do really interesting clean extrudes like that. And yeah, you can do it like anywhere. But see, what happens normally though is if you just hit S and you want to, yeah, see how disordered? It kind of like doesn't work if you just hit S. You have to do Control or Alt S in order for it to be like a perfect size from center. Very cool. Okay, so now we want to add another edge loop here. Control R. And here's a really interesting trick here. So we're gonna hit the V key on the keyboard to do a cut, where it cuts these two, or this one object basically in half along that edge. And then we're gonna do select linked. Select linked, and then we'll hit P and selection. We're gonna do just for so we go back to this top pan piece. We want to select this edge, right? I'm just gonna go ahead and hide this bottom piece. So we hide it over here in the right there, right? So this top piece is now going to have a face here by hitting F. So you just select the outer rim by holding Shift and Alt to select the outer rim. Shift Alt and then right click. So you select that and then you hit F and bam, you have a face right there, right? And now we want to hide that object and go to this and do the same thing to the bottom piece. Boom, give it a face. And then we want to select these and do Control J to join them back. And now what's going to happen is when I add the Bevel Modifier, right? Since that's cut in half right there, it doesn't look like anything now, but when I add the Bevel Modifier, I set it to angle 10, pull it down. Boom, look at that, magical. It looks like there's a seam and like you could pull the top pan piece off of the bottom pan piece. And that's a really neat trick to do like really low cost details for the like normal depth to like separate an object from another one. Now we want to select the top of this pan here. We're going to hit Control B because we want to give this another angular kind of appearance there. And hit left control to confirm that, by the way. And that top pan is looking pretty nice. Pretty nice. Cool. Let's do a little bit of work on this bottom piece here. Maybe we'll select this side of that object and this side of the object. And cursor to selected. We want to add another cube. Oh. Add cube. Cursor to selected. Hit S to scale it down a bit. And SX to pull it out. And pull that right there on the Y-axis. And we're going to pull this up till the top face is just inside the top there again. Size it out a little bit more again. Grab this bottom face here. SX only. Alright. Actually, I have a really cool idea. I'll grab this face. Or no, I'll grab this face, right? And I'll pull it right here. And we want to select linked. So select linked. Grab that. Hit P selection. So it's its own object. And we're going to show you how to use the array modifier. Thank you. I'm glad you're enjoying yourself. And I know that it could seem like I'm going really fast because I've just had like years of experience, but hopefully some of these just like random rapid fire tricks and tips that I use to make models fast will help somebody, you know? That's the goal here. So now we have this on its own object here, right? Has its own object. We go to the modifier list in the wrench tab here. And we click on array. And we want that second object to be on the y-axis. So we go to this chunk here, right? And we set that to 0 on X and we set it to 1 on Y. But we want it in the other direction. So you can just like grab this slider right here and you can adjust where you want it. And then up here is the count. I want it to be 3 because the rule of 3s is just kind of sexy. Everybody loves 3. Okay, so you have those very simple objects that add a lot of depth to the silhouette of the object, I'd say. So once you like what you got on the modifier, you click apply. And right now is an easy way to just hide the other object and grab these faces on top. And we're gonna delete them because you'll never see them. And now we select this object and shift select the other object and Control J to join them together. And we got a generator coming along. Yeah, let's go. Yeah, the array modifier is the absolute game changer. I love it. Very cool modifier indeed. All right, so let's say we want to add a gas cap to the top of this. All right, so we're going to do cursor to selected on the face. We're going to add a cylinder. We want it to be up to 16. You can get away with doing it down to like 12 or something, but then you have to not use basically the method that I'm using, which is a perfectly fine method. This is like medium poly sort of in a way, but it's perfectly acceptable for Second Life and pretty much any game engine at this point with the way computers are. So we got our little cylinder. I'm gonna say we're gonna hit the E button to extrude and then hit right click so that it's right where it originated. And we're gonna hit Alt plus S. Or wait, no. I take it back. We're gonna hit S because it'll be a perfect size outwards from there. And then we're gonna hit E again to extrude upwards. Okay. And we want this to look like a gas cap, so... Maybe we'll hit Alt S to pull this in like that, actually. Yeah. And this is another trick that I know. We're gonna add some flat edges to this top piece so that it looks like you can kind of like twist it easier. So you grab these two, grab these two, grab these two faces, grab these two faces, and now we go to the top right here. There's this little arrow notch, right? You click that, and we are going to go to Edit tab, Loop Tools, which is something you can turn on and edit preferences, and you go to the Add-ons tab, and then you type in Loop Tools. And you just check mark it because it's already in Blender. You just need to enable it and make sure it's enabled. And then you go over to this little arrow on the right side here and you click edit and Loop Tools will be here. Now Loop Tools will allow you to click the flatten button on curved surfaces that you have selected and it will flatten them. And now we have a neat little like kind of edge there, and it turned it into kind of like an octagon or whatever, like a stop sign or so yeah, that's a neat little trick that I've learned. Let's say on the top here we want another Control S cursor to selected, add cylinder, go to the cylinder options in the bottom left there and hit 6. We want another hexagon because I like hexagons. We're going to hit S to size it down. We want it right about there. We're going to select linked, hit Shift Alt and right click to select along that path, and then just Shift right click to select that. And once we have that bottom face selected, we're going to delete it because nobody will ever see it. We're going to delete this bottom face on this cap too. You can just like alt cam inside the object for that one. And delete faces. And now we have a... Ooh, you know what would be neat for this? We're gonna do the trick where we grab, we do an edge loop here, and we hit V to separate it, and right click so it goes back to where it was, and then hit P. Make it its own object. We'll hide the other one. Or wait, we don't want to just select that one. Okay, so we hit V to separate it, and then select linked, P, selection, and then we hide this object. There we go. All right, hold Shift Alt and right click to select along that loop, and hit F. Hide that one. Go back to the other model. Select the bottom of that one. Hit F so it has a face. And boom, it looks like you could twist it right off of there, you know? And we grab that one, Shift click, and Control J to join them together. Very cool. Nice little gas cap on top there. One click using the loop tools, yeah. Let's see, I think there might be some other unique things in there as well. The relax, if I'm doing some crazy stuff with like, with curves and whatnot. So if you select all these curves and these curves, this isn't a great example, but the relax loop tool thing is great. I use it all the time for like more, if the model is a bit more organic, it's the best use for the relax tool. You use edge select to grab all the edges that you want to relax, and then you hit relax, and it just kind of like smooths it out more, you know? And there's certain applications that comes really in handy for sure. I'd say I use relax, flatten, and G-stretch. G-stretch is interesting because it allows you to grab a edge like that, and then you hit G-stretch, and bam! It creates a, where there was a curve, it removes the curve on the 2 points that are the furthest apart. So you could grab these curves and just boom, G-stretch. If I grab more, G-stretch, just like flattens curves basically. But you can't do it with like a full selection, I don't think. Yeah, because that breaks it. It has to be edges only. And flatten does weird things. So you have to use G-stretch on edges if you want to like turn a curved edge into a flat edge. Like I think if I did G-stretch on this, it would just, yep, revert it back into a straight object. So that has its uses. Let's see here. Got some macaroni and cheese my girlfriend brought me. Very yummy. I gotta eat it while it's hot. Alright, generator. What else does this generator need? It needs some panels on the side to connect it all. That's what I'm thinking. So we want to grab these bad boys on the side with Control Alt right click while you have the face selection tool, and then Shift S, cursor to selected, so we can create a cube. Add cube. S, size it down. SY, size it outwards. SX to size it back in here on this here, okay? And we're gonna grab this panel here. And then on your numpad, if you hit 5 and 3, you can get a perfect side view of your viewport. And then you hold Z, go to wireframe, Then you hit S and Y, and then you can kind of see where that's going to be when you size that bottom face down. That way, this flat surface lines up with the tubing. Now we want to select linked, Z wireframe, and there's faces on the insides that we don't want. So we do Shift Alt right click to get rid of those, unselect those faces, and then we delete the invisible faces. And we want this same panel on the other side. So we want to do select linked, P, selection, turn it into its own object. As we have been doing, we're going to mirror it with the mirror tool again. So we go to the wrench, add modifier, mirror, and it's already using the x-axis to mirror it, so you can just apply that sucker and it's good to go. And we hit shift, right click, Control J to join them back. Good to go. And now, let's see here. I want there to be a connection point. So maybe we'll grab these two bottom surfaces. We want to pull these down a bit more. And since I did that, I need to make sure that they are evenly in the tube again. So S, Y, kind of center it in the inside of the tube. Now we want to select the cylinder, face select, Shift Alt, right click. We want to select the outside face of the cylinder, then Shift S, cursor to selected. We want to add a cube. Size it up until it's about on the inside of the outside panels, in the middle, those outside faces, and then SZ to size it that way. And we want to select this and pull it in and kind of eyeball it. You don't ever want to like only do like very specific stuff, you know? You want to eyeball some things every once in a while. Maybe size it down a bit more. Maybe we'll pull this in right there. Okay. So now there's a connection to the whole object right there. And what else do we want to do? Let's connect it over here too. Grab these two. We're gonna add a cube here. Size it up until it's in the center here. Control Y. Control Y. Get a kind of gauge for how thick you want that to be, because we're gonna have to rotate it. Okay. Alright, now we want to do 5 on the numpad and 3 again so we can get the side view. We're gonna go into wireframe, and now you hit R and you want to rotate this object until it's about perfect with the rotation. You can zoom in to like really micromanage that if you want to. But yeah, just rotate it into position. And now obviously like you can't just like go boop or like that. This is going to require another tip, another trick. And what you do is you hit Control E, which is for edges, and then you hit Edge Slide. And since that face is selected, you hit Control E and Edge Slide. It will slide that edge where you want it on that axis perfectly. Okay, do the same thing on here. Control E, Edge Slide. Want want to slide that face up there. We're gonna do it some more right around there. Be a little funky sometimes. You just gotta play with it. Wait, why is it doing that? Hold on. Merge by distance. Doing some weird stuff. Control edge slide. What? I don't know why it's doing that. Hold on. That's super weird. Edge slide. Why you do this? Oh, wait, okay. So for some reason it was mirrored. I have a feeling that perhaps this object is inverted for some reason. So in order for me to make sure all the faces are facing outwards, which a lot of newer creators have this issue, where they try to like upload to Second Life and the faces are kind of funky, the normals are weird. If you go up to this tab right here and you click face orientation, it looks like it was correct. I don't know why it was giving me trouble. All the faces are blue, so we're good to go. That means all the faces are in the right direction. And we'll just go back, and if you ever see any faces that are red, that's bad. You don't want to see that. So always check that. We're gonna grab these two faces and we're gonna inset. We want to hit I, okay? Until it's like right about there. I like that. And then we want to extrude it so we can add a little bit more depth to the object. So we hit E and then hit right click. That way that faces perfectly where it was. And then we want to hit Alt S so that it does a size inwards perfectly. Right about there. I like that. And when you do that, it will create faces on the inside that you don't want. Like this one, for example. Or wait, no, we want to keep that one. We want to go inside that. I'll go into wireframe. Okay, so basically, I'll select the whole object so it's easier to see. There's two faces down at the bottom here that it created when we did that extrude. We want this one and this one. And we want to delete those faces because they won't be seen. Okay. Now let's grab these two vertices on the corner of this object. We want to like, I want to keep like an angular look, but I want it to be like less sharp. So we do a Control Shift B while these are selected. And it will basically bevel the corner into a triangle and make it look a little bit softer, which I think is a neat look. And what that does is, since this face is now what people call an n-gon, which is, it has more than 4 corners. Any object you create while using n-gons, totally fine. A lot of people say don't do it. It's totally fine. I have n-gons on all of my models. And the best way to flatten the normals for when you texture, using the bevel modifier, like if I don't have this bevel modifier on, it looks fine, but we're using the bevel modifier, so it kind of messes with the faces a bit and can kind of like produce some weird results. In order to flatten them back out, we just go up to modifier and we click weighted normals, and bam! You can tell the difference if you have a good eye. Weighted normals on. It just flattens them out real nice on the smooth surfaces. Perfect. Just the way we want it. Except for that bottom area, that looked weird. I wonder if the faces got flipped there. Face orientation, no, looks good. I wonder if that's just a weird camera bug, because normally everything looks fine, so would it could be something funky. Oh, you know what? So when you do that, sometimes you have to keep certain details. So these faces that we deleted earlier in here, we need to keep those in order to maintain these bottom normals while weighted normals is enabled. So yeah, that's fixed. We fixed that. You had to keep those. So sometimes you can't delete faces when you're using weighted normals. All right, we want this to touch here. So we're gonna grab that face, okay? And we're gonna do an inset. So we're going to wireframe by hold Z and wireframe. Hit I to inset until it's like right about there, I'd say. And then hit E to bring it in. Right about there. And then we're just gonna do a normal S scale to pull that in a little bit like that. And there we go, there's that. Looking good. Our generator is coming along, I'd say. Alright, so we don't want this thing to roll, so I'm gonna add some like little feet on the bottom here. It'll be... So we want to Shift Alt, grab these right here, and Shift S, cursor to selected, add a cube, size the cube down, put it right about there, just kind of wing it. It doesn't need to be perfect. Pull that out there, grab these two sides here, shift right click to grab those, and then S, X to pull it in. Okay. Alright, we're gonna need to pull it down here. And maybe put a loop cut right about here. And pull the loop cut until it's inside there, you know? And we're gonna pull this about here. And then pull it up until it's inside as well. And this is gonna come up further. Right about there. Maybe... Actually, we'll pull it up until it's like even. And then maybe we'll add that with the extrude. Hit E. And then hit that, select this here and then pull it over. Give it sort of an angular thing. Oh, and here's a great example of G-stretch. We want these angles to stay at a perfect angle. Because like when I extruded that down, it went angle and then straight down. We don't like that. We want G-stretch. Boom. It just gives it a perfect angle all the way to the floor. Just like you want it. And now it's got a little foot so that it doesn't fall over, you know? We're gonna hit P selection and we're gonna hide this. We want to delete these two faces on the top because they can't be seen from the outside. And now we also want to go to the modifier list with the little wrench there. We're gonna mirror on the X and Y axis and apply. And now we want to get that object back and shift select Control J to join. And now our generator has feet. It has feet. Hey, Steel Digital, thanks for the follow and welcome aboard. Let's see, what else do we want to do? Let's make these panels a little bit more interesting. So let's add a loop cut there with Control R and Control R left or right click and grab both of those with Shift Alt and right click to select those loop cuts you just made. Then Control B to bring them out right about there. Grab these loop cuts with Shift Alt right click, Control B again, and then go to face selection and Control Alt right click select these surfaces here, and then SZ until you see the little edge snap. Boom. Now you got hard angles. Cool. Now you have some interesting side panels there. Or you could do it like that. That way it's a little bit different than the top piece there. Speaking of the top piece, we want to connect the top piece. So we're gonna grab this bottom face here and we're gonna inset with the I key and then extrude with the E key until it's inside the object. And then we're gonna delete that face because you'll never see it. Now it's connected. Very cool. Alright, it's connected at a lot of points now. It's very supported. It's got some feet. Alright, so this gas pan, maybe we could bring it down a bit more. Just a little bit, maybe. Right about there. Now, let's add some exhaust, because this is a inefficient generator. We want 2 cylinders for exhaust. Add cylinder and set it to 16 vertices. RX 90. Size it down until, pull it out a bit, until you kind of get the size you're going for. We want to move it into place, just eyeball it. Where do we want this to be, actually? Alright, we'll have it right about there. Okay. Now this is going to be another fancy little trick. Okay. Now, if you select this outer face of the cylinder, and you go down to this little tool on the bottom left here called Shear, you can select a axis to basically angle that face on. And we want to do it right about there. If you hit 5 and 3, you can kind of like line up the angle with the bar to create that kind of effect here. And then we want to select linked, so select linked, and we want to do Shift R to unselect that and Shift Alt R to unselect that Those faces are on the edge because we want to delete that face there. Nobody will see that. Select this again. We're going to inset right about there. We're going to inset again and hit right click so that it just goes there. And then we're just going to pull that along the y-axis so that it's perfectly going to wireframe with Z wireframe. Make sure it doesn't go too far. Right about there, I bet. Yeah, okay. So in there, it's just going to be real dark. That's where the exhaust is going to be coming from. You want to select linked. So select linked. And we hit P selection, so it's its own object. And we go to the wrench, modifier, mirror. And it's already on the x-axis, so it's good to go. And we just hit apply the mirror. And then shift select, control J to join them back. And maybe we want to do like, grab these faces, select linked. Do you want to angle them upwards a bit? Maybe so we hit R and then rotate them on the x-axis that way, right? And then pull them up a bit. And it's interfering, so we pull it out a bit more. It looks like we've pulled out the geometry a bit too far. So we're gonna fix that. In order to do that, we want to select edges and do Shift Alt and right click on those to grab those. And then if you go up here to this little menu here, we want to select Normals. And then we want to also go here and hit Active Element. And that should allow us to move perfectly on the angle that it's facing. Yep. So if you see now the selection that I've made, I can move it perfectly on that axis without doing any weird stuff. And we're just gonna move it in until it's gone, okay? And then we want to make sure we go back to medium point in that menu, and we want to go back to global on that menu so that we can have our usual controls. Auto merge. Auto merge. Auto merge for what? I'm unfamiliar with auto merge, my friend. I wonder if sizing that down would help. Yeah, we'll size that down a bit. Grab that face right there, hit S. So if you hit S and size something right there, and if you want to duplicate that on another object of the same exact orientation and everything, you just select the other face and hit Shift R. And it does the exact same size. It's good to go. Auto merge on vertices, edges, faces. In what way? That's what I'm wondering. Automatic merge, auto merge, verts. Do you mean like if I were to grab those and then like... I'm wondering if you mean like... Oh, dragging it inside it? Okay, so I think what you mean is like... If I were to automatically merge these edges, right? To the object so that it like conforms with the shape of the object. Yes, you can probably do that. It's inefficient. It will increase your detail by a lot, which you don't want. So having stuff go inside other stuff is perfectly fine. There's nothing wrong with it. You're actually creating more level of detail by not doing that. Like all of these are just single cubes that are inside this other cube. If I were to make this all one object, it would create a lot of unnecessary detail instead of just being inside it, which is very bad. It will create a lot of unnecessary vertices. So the whole auto merge thing that you're explaining is probably more for like people that are doing high poly modeling, which I do not. This is just kind of like low poly. Not necessarily low poly. I have like a weird medium poly, low poly mix kind of workflow. So objects being inside each other is perfectly fine for what I do. And yeah, I'm pretty happy with this so far. The only thing I want to do is I want to add a power switch. We're going to select this face and hit Control S, cursor to selected. Thanks, man. I appreciate that. I'm glad you like it. We're going to add a cube. And we just want to add like a simple little power switch on the side. We want to do Shift Alt right click and then just Shift right click to grab the inside face and delete it because you'll never see it. Want to select linked, S, Y, S, Z. Right about there is good. And then we want to do Control R to make a loop cut right in the center there. And then Control B to add additional loop cuts. And then we want to grab that top part and that bottom part. And we want to do I for inset. And E for extrude. And now we have some buttons. Maybe we want to grab these two top and bottom edges to pull those out a bit. That's kind of like a little optional detail. And now you can turn it on and off. Ooh, buttons. For tubing, I like to use the curves. So what I do is where we started was we had a cube. We sized it out. And then we duplicated the cube and we did Alt S to size it up. Right, just normal S is fine to size it up more. And then we deleted the only faces. And then we deleted these top ones and these bottom ones on these sides here. Delete those edges. And then you do P selection. So this little frame here was on its own object. We went in and we selected the bottom two edges and we did SY. And as you can see, it created the framework for our tubing. And then we went to object, convert to curve. And now that it's a curve, on the right side here, there's a button, a panel, called Object Data Properties. And if you go to the Geometry tab here, you hit resolution to 5, that's where I like it. And then you can add depth, right? Usually I actually do the curves first, but you can do it this way too. So you add your depth, and then you can go in and select all of these corners. We'll do the bottom ones first. can I actually... No, actually, I think you do need to do the other. So, okay, this has to go back to being a mesh because I did it out of order. Okay, so convert it back to a mesh. Now, when it's in this like wireframe appearance, you want to grab these corners and you want to bevel them into the curvature of the tube. I think 5 verts is good enough for that top piece because it's a 90-degree angle. And since this is a bit of a different angle, we only did 4, which is good enough. And so you got the cage, you got the yada yada. Now you go to object and convert it to curve. And now you can do the geometry part. You go to the geometry tab, hit it to 5 resolution, and then boom. That's how I do curves. That's how I do pipes, tubes. Easiest way to do it. Best way to do it. Fast, efficient, perfect. And then you just shade smooth and turn it back into a mesh. And then you can join it back to the object. Get rid of that. And that's how we made that. Bada bing, bada boom. All right, so we have our object here. All right, so I'm happy with the model where it's at now. This is a very fine generator, I think. It will have a nice hum. Maybe we'll make a few parts move. Which, if we want moving parts, we're gonna have to pull it apart a little bit. Yeah. I want this to like turn while it's pumping out fumes and humming. Thanks guys, I appreciate it. Yeah, I mean, once you know all the fine little like mechanics and like what can help you do things faster, that's how you get fast at model making, is just like knowing how the program can translate what you have in your head into reality. Just being able to do little things as fast as possible, you know? Maybe we'll do that. Maybe not so much. Alright, so we select those faces, hit I to inset them, and then you hit Alt-S to pull them out. Right about there. A little bit more depth on the side panel. Okay. So now the real fun part. UV mapping. Woo! Everybody's least favorite part. Alright, so UV mapping just kind of comes with experience. I will show you how, I guess. So in order to UV map, you kind of just grab edges where you want. It's kind of weird and hard to explain, but if you even know what UV mapping is, it creates the 2D texture format for the model so that you can, you know, texture. And it's a huge mess right now, so we need to organize it. And I'm not the best at it, but I'm alright. And my models look fine, so they may not be maximum efficiency, but they work. So you grab some edges you go to edge, and you go to mark seam. I have that favorited to my Q button so that I can mark seams real quick and easy. Mark seam, and that will be good for this object because I want to keep like the curvature here without having a seam there. So what happens is if you look over here, you hit the U button and you hit unwrap, and boom, that's what it looks like. That's how it'll be. So unwrap, and in the bottom right here, or bottom left here, this margin, I want you to set that to 0.005. And what that does is it spaces these out just a tiny little bit. And you want that because you don't want any kind of like texture interference, which is bad. Bad. So yeah, you mark the edges where you think you want them. I want to have some edges right there. Mark. Oh, hi, Mark. And we want some edges along that. And cylinders are weird, so we're gonna need to mark right along there. And there. Boom. And that should unwrap that object perfectly. Let's just take a look. So this is what it'll look like. And you can do conformal, but conformal doesn't work well with I'm not even sure what I just did there. But anyway, unwrap. And we're not gonna do conformal. We're gonna do angle based. When I hit Control Z, it like flattened out a lot of it weirdly in a way that you don't want, because we don't want these spaces in between here. It'll create some weird stuff going on. So anyway, unwrap. Yeah, that's how it'll look in the finished product. Obviously, we're not like unwrapping for the finished thing. There's only going to be like a few. There's going to be way more detail on these wraps when we're done. So here's a good example of like if you want to work on this piece, you just P selection, hide the object, and you can just work on individual pieces. So if your mesh object gets crazy detailed and you just want to work on a small little section, you can do that. Let's grab that and that. We'll do... this is another useful thing. So, okay. This is a feature that is invaluable for when you are doing this process. So if you grab this and you grab that and you just want an edge along there, because sometimes it's funky. It did let me select it, but sometimes you want to just grab that, and you go to select and select loops, and you hit edge loops. No. Wait. Sorry. Select loops. Okay. Select boundary loop, and that grabs the outer loop of what you have selected. So like, boom, boom, think of this as like an upside down cup. It wants to grab the outer edge there and select boundary loop. I have that set to my Q button. And that's a really easy way to grab some hard to reach loops. And we mark seam there. We're gonna just grab this face and mark seam because there's no crazy geometry that we have to worry about, because it's just one face, so it'll just grab the boundary loop, mark seam, and that should be good to go. Sometimes you have to like grab the whole thing there and then do boundary loop and mark seam like that, and then grab that and like mark seam like that. But we don't have to do that because it's going to be treated like that. And that's good. That's fine for texturing. And then we bring back the model and we join it back to the object and it's good to go. So now we got to do this piece. We can hit P selection, hide the big model, and we just want to do this like ring right here. Mark seam. Boom. Marked. Good to go. Join it back to the main object. Let's do this piece. Did we, yep, we got rid of the thing. Now this is trickier. So this is a lower geometry, lower detail, so it'll be more obvious if we... So we mark the inside, that right there, right? We're gonna actually have to mark these seams on the top because it's such a like hard surface kind of edge. So we'll mark it like that, and then we want to grab this one, that line, that edge, and that edge, and we'll mark seam right there. Actually, you only need to mark one. So we're gonna mark the less noticeable one. We'll clear that seam. You can do clear seam. You can clear any red seam that you added by going to edge, clear seam. It's right under mark seam. So you can take back work that you've done. And you only need it to wrap around that right there. And the reason why I chose the inside edge and not the outside edge, basically this edge faces outwards. So basically if you're looking at the model from here, you're not going to see a seam. But if you're looking at the model from here, you're still like not going to focus on this side of the model. So this seam is going to be less noticeable. So that's where you want it. You always want your seams to be in places where people aren't going to notice them from a distance. And all right, so let's do this top piece. Select linked, and then edge. No, select loops and select boundary loop, which is key to my Q button. Select boundary loop. And that's going to grab those edge loops where we deleted faces, which is an easy way to grab them without having to like alt cam inside the model a bunch. And for this supporting piece on the inside there, we're just going to grab all 4 of those faces and mark seam because no one's going to see those really. So it's not as important to have like perfect UVs there. And then hit this top piece and then hold control and right click over here to just grab that whole panel there. And we're going to do select boundary loop and mark seam. Just put all that stuff on your Q bar, right click features in the... If you find a feature that you like in these menus on the top left here, right click it and add it to your Q favorites bar because like that just makes the whole process 10 times faster easily. So yeah, that's marked on the top there. And actually we don't want to do that on the top there because what we want to do is we want to select the side, the top, and the sides. And that's how we want it because we want that seam to be on the bottom where it's less visible. Select boundary loop, mark seam. And that piece is perfectly UV wrapped. And now this little edge here will have that curvature without the seam interference, which is nice. Now for this piece here, it's a little tricky because of the shape, but basically we're gonna grab it right here and right here. We're gonna add seams there and there. And there's pretty much no avoiding having an ugly seam on this kind of geometry. It's gonna happen. We want it to be on this side. This is the ugly side of the model. There's going to be a bunch of smoke coming out of these pipes, so it'll be less noticeable. So we'll just grab that and mark seam. So that's where the seams will be, and then this panel around here will wrap all the way around. It'll be nice and clean. And we want to make sure, so we'll just do Shift Alt, grab all that, and select boundary, mark seam. So that's wrapped around that. Okay, we're gonna do the same thing here, boundary, mark seam, grab this face, mark seam. That's where the seams are gonna be. It'll be noticeable if you like zoom in and look, but it won't be that noticeable, okay? So that's where you want that. Now we want to grab these and these, and since those will be flat, select boundary loop and mark seam. And so this is tricky. So these kind of like this, these faces that we made to give the illusion that the object is two separate pieces, which it technically is. We're gonna have to grab an edge here and then select linked, hit P, selection, hide one of these, go in, grab the face, and Q, mark seam, and then grab that face, mark seam. Okay, we'll hide this object, grab the pan, mark seam, that's where we want that one, mark seam, that's where we want that. Now the pan's all marked up, good to go. Join it back together. All right, let's do these side panels. Super easy. Just grab both of those panels, select linked, and select boundary loop. Okay, marked seam. And those face loops that we deleted earlier are where we want that mark. And the next marks are going to be on the inside here. So we just zoom in and grab those. Okay. We want those inside faces, because those are where the seams are going to be the least obvious. Mark seam, and then the rest of that geometry is just going to wrap around those edges. Nice and smooth. Let's just make sure we deleted those. Yep, okay. So we just grab that, mark seam. We're going to grab the sides of this, and we're going to select boundary loop, mark seam, and we're going to grab the buttons, the sides and the front facing, and then we're going to hit boundary loop and mark seam, and that creates an easy, that's like an easy way to do that. And then we want to grab the sides again and mark seam, and that's all wrapped the best way that I think looks the best. So there will be some edge seams on the edge, but it's less noticeable. The tops are where the eyes kind of focus, so it'll be smooth all around where you want it to be. Now for this big pipe, this is the easiest one yet. Just grab an inside seam somewhere and just mark it. Good to go. Well, maybe. We'll see. It could be weird because of the shape. So let's just do an unwrap real quick and see what it looks like. It looks weird, but it'll work. That's exactly where you want it. So yeah, that's good to go. Alright, so let's just grab this object here. Select linked. Select boundary loop. Oh, we didn't delete those faces. Alright, so we want to select linked. Unselect those with Shift Alt. Go into wireframe, make sure you have those faces selected. So if you do it this way, you can actually mark seam and then delete the faces. So if you keep the faces and you just go back and grab the faces, you can mark them and then delete them in the same process. And then we just want to grab this bottom face and mark seam. And the top faces of that cube will have curvature without a seam, which is good. We like that. Okay, so how about these three? Select linked and select boundary loop, which will be the faces we deleted earlier, and mark seam. And then we just do a Shift Alt right click on those faces, select boundary loop and mark seam. And those are good to go. For these cylinders here, we're gonna select linked. We want these inside ones, so we do select boundary loop and we mark those. Inside here, we want to grab these two faces and mark seam there. And then we want to grab these faces with Shift Alt right click, select boundary loop, mark seam, boom. We want to grab the basically the bottom edge here of the cylinder, because nobody's going to see that. Nobody looks underneath here unless they're really looking for those seams. And then some people might think like, okay, I'll grab this one right here. No. You always want the least visible for these kind of things. Mark seam. Boom. Nobody's going to see those seams, but it'll be perfectly wrapped for a cylinder. For this object, it's a little in a funky spot, so we're going to select linked and hit P. We're going to hide the big object and go into it. We're just going to go ahead and mark right there. We're going to mark that face. We're going to select boundary loop and mark that. Select boundary loop and mark that. And then we're going to grab that face and mark those. That way this is like its own face on the texture and that's its own face. Good to go. And we'll grab the sides here, mark seam because there's no crazy geometry, and that will wrap nicely. Good to go. Join those. For these bottom panels, we're going to select linked, select boundary loop, and we want to mark seam on those faces we deleted. And then we just grab the bottom faces and mark seam, and we're good to go. Those edges will be visibly curvy without seeing the seam. Now for the feet, we're just going to grab these and select linked and select boundary loop, and we're going to get those inside edges there, mark seam. And for these, we're going to go ahead and hold Shift Alt and right click to grab along that curve. You want to just click like one of the edge lines there, and because like a corner like that. Otherwise, if you hit it like right there, it'll do a different one. So yeah, grab that, select boundary loop and mark there, and that'll wrap nicely all the way around like a little like piece of tape. And yeah, I think the whole thing is unwrapped. So you select all and you hit U to unwrap. And no, there is definitely something that I haven't done. So if you ever unwrap your project and it looks funny, there's something you can do on the top right here on the UV screen. You can do that. You can hit this button here, which is like sync selection. And then if you select something that's weird, like I hit that, the face there or whatever, maybe we have to hit the edge. It'll find it in the actual workspace, so you can, so I found my problem. We didn't UV wrap this piece, which makes a lot of sense. So we come back in here, and since we didn't grab these faces, I'm actually hit P, selection, hide the object, grab these faces that are inside the tube, mark seam, delete, and then we're gonna grab that and that. Actually, we'll grab right here, select boundary loop, mark seam, grab this top piece and this piece, mark seam, and Control Alt to grab this loop around it and do select boundary loop and mark seam. And that outside curve is good. And we'll attach it back, Control J. And then you hit unwrap again to take a look and see if there's anything weird going on again. Looking good. Perfect. Very nice. But this is our final UV wrap. We want to section this into multiple textures because it's just, there's too much detail for one texture. So what I do is you go to this here. This is the material properties tab on the right there. And right now there's one. We'll say this is the gas tank. We'll name it gas tank and we won't do anything because that's going to be the default material. Now we want to add one for the, let's say new. You hit the plus button up there and you have to be in object mode for this to work. You hit the plus button and you double click it to name it, let's say side panels. And then you go back into edit mode and you grab a couple edges and then you do select linked, right? Maybe we'll grab the buttons there too. Select linked. Select linked. Okay. You know what? We'll grab the feet too. And I think that'll be good. Name it side panels, feet. And then once all that's selected, we click on it, select it over here, and we hit assign. Now it's on its own material. You hit U and you unwrap. You go over here, you turn off that button I had you click earlier. And now this is a proper UV for one texture on the object. And then if you select a face and then you go to select similar and material, which I have on my Q button, it'll select the active material of what you have selected. So you can go back to the other one and that's still too much, so we want to separate this even more. Maybe we'll add these bottom panels to the side panels, so assign. And we want the tubing to all be on its own thing, its own texture. So we select the tubes, hit the plus button. I guess you can add them even in edit mode. So I take back what I said earlier. Hit new, and we go just name that tubes, and then we unwrap it. And that's what our tube texture will look like. And we go back and we select. Make sure it's assigned. And then unwrap. Okay. And we go back to this material here. We're gonna add this top piece to side panels, feet. And then this bottom chunk of the object, we're gonna grab that, and select linked. This bottom chunk is gonna be a fourth one. And that's about as many as we're gonna need for this object. Since it is a pretty detailed object, we had to do 4. I like to sit around more like 2, 3 at most, but 4 is pretty common for a fairly complex object. So we'll add a new material here and call it bottom block. And select material, unwrap. Make sure it looks good. It looks great. And we just go through and select all these and make sure to re-unwrap them if we changed anything. And there's the gas tank, original one. We're gonna unwrap that again because it changed. And it looks like this could be way more efficient. Like, I normally don't have to do this, but if I notice something that's like really inefficient, I can change that easily. So we're gonna go at this top right little selection thing here, and we'll select these. You hit G to drag them where you want and size them up, because if these are bigger, they will have better texture resolution. And then you just control drag, select these and size them up. The bigger they are on the UV texture, the better resolution the texture will be. So that was an easy way to make that better, more efficient. Right here, there's no way I could make this more efficient, I don't think. So that's fine. Right here we could do like pack islands in the UV, that didn't even help. So yeah, this is kind of funky. I could probably do some, yeah, we can make that a little bit better. So yeah, just little things like that will make the textures better, more efficient. And the reason why I pulled this object out from the other part of the object is this is going to be rotating, so we want to texture it sort of separately from the rest of it. Actually, we want this to be part of the bottom block, assign there. And grab material, unwrap again, select by material, and unwrap again, unwrap. Make sure there's that 0.005 margin. Just kind of go through and make sure everything looks good. And yeah, you can also, on the right side here, you can hit bottom block and select, and it'll select anything that's over here like that. So tubes, select, it'll grab more, or you can unselect everything. Slide panels feet, select, it'll grab them. That way, so you can do it like either in this menu or by doing material, select by material. And yeah, this model is UV mapped and ready to throw in Substance Painter. And then that's how you texture stuff in Substance Painter. And then you upload it to Second Life. Woohoo! So now that this model is basically done and ready to be painted in Substance Painter, we go to save as, because we want to, I mean, you could save earlier, but I'd make models so fast, it would be done like a half an hour ago if I wasn't explaining everything step by step. So I don't really need to save in between model making. But as you make models, you should save progress in case you have like a power outage or whatever. So yeah, I have like a raw 3D folder here. Just call it new generator. Save, okay? And that's not how we're gonna upload it to Substance Painter though. We go to export, go to file, export, and we hit FBX, and we go to FBX folder, new generator, export. And now that file is ready to pull over into Substance Painter. Unfortunately, I am going to have to call it for tonight, so I'm going to show you how to set this up real quick, but I won't be able to paint it at the moment. That will have to come in a different stream. So you go to File, you go to New, select, and you type in New Generator. That's not what you want to do. Never mind. I'm just going to hit N and find it. New Generator. Okay. So that's selected, you hit OK. The model shows up in your viewport. Okay. You just kind of like want to look around. If you see anything weird, like seams across surfaces that are like bad, you could have UV mapped it incorrectly, but it looks good. Actually, they won't show up until you bake it. So you go to the texture set settings. My layout might be different than whoever is watching this video, so you'll have to like do a layout that's similar to mine if you want to like follow along easily. But yeah, texture set settings, bake mesh maps. You want to turn off ID. You want to turn off average normals. Anti-aliasing, set it to 8x8, and bake selected textures. That's it. That's all my process is. It's super easy. It's ready to texture. And now we go up here. I delete these. There's all 4 of the materials that we created earlier. The bottom block, gas tank, side panels, feet, tubes. Go into each layer. Delete those. Okay. And now we're going to go to base color. And I have the need for some lighting because Second Life just doesn't look like anything without lighting. You absolutely need these lighting filters. So there's the baked lighting environment, which is something that's native to Substance Painter. And once you have that in the layer, you hit baked lighting environment and you go down to, or you go to properties dash filter, and you go down to the environment map selection there. And I will try to use this soft 2 ring environment here. We'll see how it works out. We want to set this to overlay. Okay. And then in the filters on the left here in your shelf, I have a filter called, or no, we already added that filter. In smart materials, I have a smart material called baked lighting or baked light gradient. And this thing is absolutely killer. You put it on top of the baked lighting environment and you set it to soft light. And it doesn't look like much right now, but when you adjust things, it's gonna look crazy good. Pull it to right about there for the shading. And this is just the lighting filters that I put on my models. Once you start actually adding textures and all that fun stuff, we're just gonna copy these to each layer. And so yeah, now look at that. You already have your shading. And all you have to do is add a bunch of materials and details and paint all the character into the model. Like let's say on the gas tank, let's throw like a worn metal. We'll throw it underneath these lighting layers. And yeah, just like stuff like that. You just put it under there. Obviously there's a lot more to it. You gotta play around with it a lot, but I have to end it right here for tonight. We're gonna go ahead and save as new generator. And I'm gonna texture this later. But yeah, it's ready to texture. It's all modeled up, UV mapped, and ready to go. This thing's gonna be awesome. I'm gonna make it hum. I'm gonna make the smoke effects come out of the tubing. And this is gonna be rotating. It's gonna be great. And I'm gonna sell it. So keep an eye out for that. And yeah, that'll be it for tonight. Thanks for stopping by, guys. I really appreciate it. Appreciate the watches, and I hope you guys have a good one. Bye-bye.